What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. This is Best Served Podcast 190, a little piece of France with Blandine Mazeran of the French Kitchen. Thank you, Blandine, for being on the show.
Bonjour. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so this channel, Best Served Bake, we really focus on bakeries, pastry, bread, the people and the businesses that are focused on baked goods. And for you, chef owner of the French Kitchen Culinary Center in Colorado Springs, Colorado, tell us, when somebody walks into the French Kitchen, when somebody gets, the French Kitchen experience, what can they expect?
So when they walk in, first you have the smell of baked goods, which is always pretty neat.
Yes.
And then they can find a lot of things French. So we'll have a bakery with pastries and cakes and breads, and then savory items like sandwiches, more on the French side, or quiches, breakfast croissant, and then now a whole other part with meals and a lot of frozen supplies that people can find. That's for the bakery side, and then we have a cooking class side as well, and a little boutique.
The French are so connected to bread, to
yeah, it's important.
Like lines at 5 a.m. Like the second, it's like if you eat bread, you exist in French culture. Why is that? What is the obsession with bread? Besides it's delicious, but there's something cultural, something deeper than just it being delicious. Why is bread, especially in pastry and bread in the morning, starting your day with that, why is that so fundamental to the French culture?
I don't know. I've always been raised like that, where I would go to the bakery and buy the bread and bring it back home, and that was the bread for the day. And the next day you would repeat that. Of course, you ate a little piece on the way, so you would come back. Would always get 2 baguettes for the family, but 1.5 made it home. And then the pastries, it's the whole meal. Like you start with the first course, then you have the main course, then you have cheese, then you have dessert, and so that's part of the thing. And when you have big dinners, or even daily meals with my family, that's what we would have, like the whole experience, and not always desserts, like pastries. But Sunday morning was also another thing where we would get the croissant and pain au chocolat and bring that back home and eat breakfast together.
Whatever that is, however you're raised, that becomes just the way that you live. We need more of that.
Well, we provide that in Colorado Springs now.
Absolutely. I think it's important. It's also very interesting because you kind of start every day in just such a good place. Like,
it's hard some days.
Yeah,
because you have those croissants sitting right in front of you, and you're like,
Yeah, it's just an interesting thing. It's also just having that level of routine that starts as something that's so quintessential and so simple and is so humble. I think also is a very interesting dynamic with the way that the cultures of food drastically different in the States than in France. And so these little things that just showing up to the bakery and getting home with 1.5 baguette, it matters. It's very interesting. It matters to me. So take us back to kind of, for you, when did you first catch the hospitality bug? When did you start in this industry? When and where was that?
Actually, when I moved to the US,
Okay.
So back in 2008, because I was an English teacher in France. And when I moved here, it was hard to find a lot of products I was used to.
Yeah.
So whatever I couldn't find, I started making it. And then that led me to being a personal chef. That led to opening a creperie. And finally, that led to the French Kitchen 8 years ago, where I would go to parties and bring food, and people would ask for my recipes. So I was like, hey, I'm going to teach that, and started cooking classes in my home. So for 5 years, I did that in my home, and it developed, and I created a little culinary boutique in my living room. And that kind of grew a bit too much for a house and for the family. So I knew a baker, Sébastien Mulbrook, in Colorado Springs, and I asked him if he wanted to be part of that and handle all the bakery side and open a bigger place in a commercial space with a little corner for the cafe, a little corner for the bakery, a little boutique, and then the cooking classes all in one place. So that's why I like to call it kind of a culinary center. And the whole idea was, if you find some things in the bakery that you like, you can learn how to make them in the cooking classes. If you learn something in the cooking classes but you never want to remake it, you can buy it in our store. And it kind of built a community, because people, they built link during the class and connection, and then they would come back to the cafe, or people would come to the cafe and they had no clue we had cooking classes, and then they would say, hey, that sounds neat, and we have a garage door behind in between the bakery and the cooking classes, so people could see everything what was going on. And it was it's a fun place.
Well, let's talk about, Sebastian, because when you're talking about what you're doing and the cooking classes and some of that, that's very much you, and you kind of have full reign over that. Opening up a bakery, a business, is a whole different ball game. So I was very interested kind of in that dynamic. Completely different. Completely different mindset. Like the food is the easy part. The baking is the easy part when you're running a business. Absolutely. So to have somebody like Sebastian as a part of that, let's talk about the dynamic. How did you guys go about it? What was kind of the way that you said, we're going to build this business, this two-part business, and how you thought about the bakery itself as a bakery, as a cafe?
So I put him in charge of the bakery side, because he had all the knowledge and I did not. And over the past 3 years, he's trained me, and that's I've learned a lot, and I thank him for that. But yeah, he's in charge of that part of the business. And I asked him because I knew how it worked, and I really enjoy the way he does the pastries or the breads. He's got a talent, and for me, when you feel the butter, and you still have the butter on your fingers when you eat that croissant, and it's like it does a quality that's better than a lot of places in France. Because it's not because you live in France that you find the best pastries and breads everywhere. It's actually becoming harder and harder, because a lot of things are getting industrial now.
Yes.
So at the French Kitchen, right here in Colorado, we do everything from scratch. We come early, and he comes early, and
very early,
and makes everything here. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that's an interesting thing you're talking about, where the United States got very industrialized food system very quickly. It was at the forefront of industrializing the food system. Now we're going very slowly the other way, where you see, heritage grains being milled into flours that are exponentially better than some of the commodity flours that you can get, right? And then you talk about France and other places that are kind of culturally relevant in the food scene that now are institutionalizing some things. So do you now see that all the things you had to make, and I like the way you were nice about it, all the things you had to make yourself, because a lot of the things that were representations of a croissant were just garbage. Like, let's just call it what it is. They were not good. And you were like, I am, as a self-respecting French woman, cannot abide this, so I'm just going to make it myself. Now are you seeing access to even better butter, even better flour, even better products? And is that exciting for you in the bakery and in the classes?
Yeah, it is. And when I moved, like, cheese for me is something I miss a lot. And that has changed over the past 12 years, where I can find more cheeses now. So a lot of products like that are becoming, I think, more available. And making it yourself makes it a lot more available. The products we use, that's something I always put a lot of attention to. It took me 6 months to find the perfect ham. It took me almost a year to find the perfect butter. The flour, same thing. I just use one flour that I trust, because it doesn't have the bad chemicals that can give some problems to a lot of people. So we actually have a lot of gluten sensitive clients who can eat everything we do thanks to the flour we use. And for me, that's important. So choosing the ingredients is really something I put a lot of time into. And some people said, you're pricey, but yeah, you cannot have it all. So we're pricey because the quality of ingredients of our ingredients are pricey.
You're investing in the right things, and you just made a really, really good point. A lot of gluten intolerance you're starting to find is a lot of the chemicals that go into the industrial wheats that we're using are exacerbating any underlying issues that people might have. And you see a lot of people that are using, quality products from start to finish that don't have a lot of those chemicals or fillers or additives in them, and not having the issues with it. Or you see people with sourdoughs because of the fermentation breaking some things down. So I'm very, very interested in that. And for you, there's a big segment of people that now have concerns with that, and the fact that you can be of service to them seems like it'd be very valuable from you, not just from sales, but from building community. Have you seen that really play out?
Yeah, and that's interesting because on the community side, that really developed a lot with the shutdown, actually, because we couldn't have the clients in the store anymore. And we had to find ways to stay in business because we lost all the cooking class part of the business. And so I took over the marketing. I was very present on social medias. Good. And people were present as well. And they answered and they would share. And when no one could find flour, we always had flour because we had a bakery and we had no choice. So we made everything to stock up, put flour in our teaching kitchen, and the yeast, same thing. So we kept all the products that people wanted, and people have discovered the flour, and then they were talking about that and said, oh yeah, I get better result with that flour. And I was explaining why, I chose that flour over another one, and why we picked that butter and what difference it would make. And so yeah, I think the community for my business has always been super important, but it has developed a lot more recently. Like before, people would get a family feeling with us, and without having the customers in front of us. I wanted to keep that, and I think we succeeded because a lot of people in Coral Springs discovered us and were like, yeah, I want to go there.
So important. Two things that strike me from what you just said. One is you had access to a product that there was a national shortage on, yeast and flour. All of a sudden there was huge runs on them, which I loved hearing that. I don't like hearing people hoarding toilet paper because we're a little bit crazy. The only thing that I hoarded was rice because I'm like, I can eat the rice, right? I was like, I got a 50-pound bag of rice. I was like, yeah, just in case. For you though, the flour and the yeast, it did a couple things. One, it kept people connected with you. Two, it put revenue in where you were able to sell that product when you didn't have certain streams before. And it created a communication channel. And I want to go there for a while because you mentioned taking over the marketing. I think it's hugely important. In food and beverage, we sometimes, especially restaurants where we have, butts and seats is our goal, we sometimes underestimate the communication that we can have with directly to somebody's home. And so we're always trying to get them to us and think that that's the only way that we can succeed. For you now, you're going into people's homes. You're bringing the products there. They're walking home with the baguette, and they got 1.5 baguettes when they get home type scenario because they can't eat the baguette with you. Are you doing any virtual cooking classes, anything like that? Has that transpired?
So yeah, I had the idea several times. And the way we transformed the business, like in 24 hours, was pretty intense.
Wow.
And so I decided I was not ready to go online with classes and redesign all my classes for that. And I just had too much work to do, changing everything. So I was like, I'll do it when I can. And so for now, we just do private event classes, and it's nothing compared to what we had before, but that's the best I can give for now. And I still have to handle, the other part of the business because all my teachers found other jobs. So I'm kind of almost the last one teaching classes, and I have to run a business right now. And it's going to come back, hopefully, but not quite yet.
Do you see a demand for it? Are people asking?
Yeah, they are. The problem is that they cannot dine in like before. We have to wear the mask, which is doable. But the dining part, there was a lot of sampling, and all the social part of the classes, I feel, is dead now.
Right.
And they are not as long as before, because when you were including that dining or you had a meal that needed to be ready during the meal, well, you can't do that anymore. So it's like redesigning every class, and that took me a while to design them that way because I work a lot beforehand to make sure the classes are going to run exactly the way I want in the timing with recipes that work. So for now it's on hold, but it allowed me to develop other aspects, like again the marketing or catering. That's something I'm actively working on it. Good. And something happened during that time too, is that were a bakery and had some frozen items like soups, but we had to develop a totally new aspect that was actually not in my plan initially, and that was to develop family meals and meals to go. And so I first had an advisor who had a restaurant in New York, Shane Lyons, and he stayed with me instead of going back to his restaurant, and helped me develop that part of the business, and then send me Hogan Arons, who's now my chef and a kitchen manager, who then took over after him and is running that now in an amazing way, making sure to manage the kitchen team, because I don't have time to do that anymore. And so that's he's a huge asset, and he also helps me get flavors of France that I didn't have. Like recently brought rillettes into our store. I was like, oh, that's something I was missing,
nice.
and thank you. And so yeah, we have fun developing a lot of new recipes and menus, seasonal menus, and he has a lot of ideas, and he's an amazing cook. So another huge asset at the French kitchen.
Sophie, we need to get some rillettes up to Denver. Let's figure out how to do
with
that.
baguette.
I'm such a big fan. You know what? Rillettes is an interesting thing. Pork rillettes, and if you're doing very kind of rustic style, it's a really good gateway to get people into pate. Or
yes, true.
Right, get them into duck liver mousse or a foie gras kind of derivative there, because it kind of has a little bit of that. Yet it's porky, and Americans are used to pork and not as used to liver. So total tangent there, but I'm a big fan. Hogan, I'm a big fan of what you're talking about, because I think those type of things are important, and they just feel comfortable, and they travel well, and there's something that can sit in somebody's fridge for a little bit while. So I think it's just a smart way that you're kind of bringing your brand, your offerings into people's homes. I want to get back to the community piece for a second, because I was interested in if there's demand, and I asked that because in this moment, people are going to the things that make them feel the most comfortable, the most comforted, the most supported, the most familiar. And with everything crazy going on, they need those things. And so baking bread and things like that, you see that play out. The idea of comfort food, that they don't need zhuzhy fine dining. They need something that just makes them feel whole. And the fact that they're asking for both your products, but also the way that cooking together makes us feel is important, because that means that you have established yourself as a pillar in the community more than just the bakery. And so that I think is important. I want people listening to really reflect on that. The way that you are a pillar in your community matters, because in moments of turmoil, they're going to look to you. And that is just a really powerful responsibility that you can take. And practically from a business standpoint, it allows you to have enough attention to survive a moment like this. So I think it's very smart. And then how then are you taking that, and then the marketing? You mentioned the marketing. So how are you continuing to communicate with your audience, with your community?
So I want to bounce on what you just said, because that's exactly that. And over all the years I've taught cooking classes and then had the cafe, people come to us because sometimes, they had problems in their lives, and we had someone, he lost his wife, and he would come to classes, so he's not alone, and he's with people there, or people who've changed their diet from processed food to cooking on their own. And for me, that's an aspect that's super important. Like, we have a family, it's a small business. My kids are often at work doing stuff as well, and people know them, and it's really a family business, and that's what we want. And during that whole shutdown, that's what I was saying, is that you can come to us, but we're going to come to you. We're going to put French food in your home, and you can travel, we'll travel to you. So we developed, our delivery system. And that was a big thing during that time, where, we tried Grubhub and DoorDash and all those delivery platform, and it was a nightmare. I'm not kidding, It was a nightmare. And so I talked to a really good friend I have in Denver, Julien Renaud, who has his own bakery, and he had a very good system for deliveries. And so in just, again, 24 hours, I think we developed that delivery system. But without him, I would never have been able to develop that fast, and gave me all his tips. And now we deliver, which I never thought I would do before.
I love this.
And then, so to answer your question on the marketing, so
Well, here,
Facebook
hold
has
on.
been
Let's stay on that
oh,
for a second, because that's
okay.
really good. The camaraderie to be able to help out, a competitor, whatever that might be, I think is really, really important. The other thing that you did, and then Julian was a support in, is many people have had bad experiences with third-party delivery platforms. Many people say 30% fees, I'm losing money on that transaction. And that's true. Yet then we also demonize the people that want that food in their home. And I think that's the most amazing thing possible. If somebody wants to take your brand and bring it into their home, that is a powerful opportunity that is created. And so you didn't say, we had a horrible experience, we're not doing delivery. You said, we had a horrible experience, we're going to double down on delivery and do it ourselves. This is you have to listen to this, people. This is one of the most important things. You said there's a demand in the market. We need to be there. I'm a smart business person. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to build the platform and I'm going to market that versus be a victim of circumstance because these guys are charging too much money. So why was that important for you? Because a lot of people get stuck. They get stuck and say, I don't like it, I'm not doing it.
No, I take each challenge and change them into solutions. So like the beginning of the shutdown, after a week of people refunding people for classes, I saw almost $0 in my bank account. I was like, I'm not going to lose my business. I can't. It's my life. That's how I feed my kids. And I was like, what will I do? And that's what I've learned over the years having a business. I've grown a lot stronger. And now it's easier and easier. And every time there's a problem, it's not a problem. Okay, it's a challenge. And you cannot find employees? Well, fine. Then the next one is going to be the best one. And one day it's going to happen. And it's going to happen at the right moment. And there's always it's always like that now. It's very rare that now, I go cry in my office and for 3 days because I cannot see the answer to the problem. Now it's okay. It's going to get better. I know it. I just have to do whatever it takes to make it work better. So that's an advice to any business owner that are starting and sometimes don't know all aspects of a business. You're going to learn a lot.
Yeah.
And it's going to be intense. It's not easy every day, but it's so rewarding that it's totally worth it.
Are you aware of a term of a movement called rage baking?
No.
Okay, Kathy Gunst, who's the resident chef for NPR's Here and Now, and 16 cookbooks or something like that, and has a book called Rage Baking, where throughout time in American history, Revolutionary War and Civil War and things, women have used baking as a way to use their voice when they didn't have a political voice. And then also women have used baking as a way to let out some angst that, like, I'm frustrated with things, I'm going to bake because it's therapy for me. That, so anyway, we're going to connect you. Sophie's going to connect you with that because I think there's a movement happening there. And I think Kathy and you would absolutely have something to speak about because, we have to figure out a way through things. And sometimes the simple thing of making a loaf of bread can absolutely be transformative. So I want to touch on that. Last moment, you giving great advice to people. The social media side, the marketing side, some of that, the way that you're interacting in that. What are a couple of tips? Because a lot of us, again, we make things with our hands. Mm-hmm. We get people into our restaurants. We are able to have that experiential side. We struggle with this and saying, well, this isn't how I speak to my audience. It is the way
it is.
you speak to your audience. You better figure it out. How have you gone about that? What are a couple of tips? What are a couple of things we can be thinking about?
So what I've found taking over that marketing side is that you have to put your heart and your story in what you talk about. So I've started doing a 6 a.m. post daily since March, and says, "Good morning, Colorado Springs," and then I talk about something. And if it's about baguettes, I would tell my bakery story as a kid, or if it's like a recipe on my father's birthday, I put one of his favorite recipe, and I think I was saying that he burns it, so you have to watch it. But it's I think it's how I built it. And I think in the midst of the nightmare that was April 1st on April Fool's, that's my favorite day of the year. And I said, I'm not going to let that, I'm going to still do my April Fool. And I found the perfect one where we would do drone deliveries. And I got my photographer to do a picture of a drone holding a baguette in front of the store. And that was a fake thing. And people laughed. And I was so happy because no one wanted to laugh. There was almost no April Fools, but I did mine, and that was my best one ever, I think. And so it was a fun day. We really had fun, and it was just 15 days after we had to shut down, and it was still a madness. But that's what I try to do. I'm kind of sarcastic, and I keep my sense of humor even in the bad moments to feel context. So yeah, putting your personal experience, I would say that's what counts, and listening to what people say, reading comments. I'm on a bunch of Facebook groups, and I see what people say. And if someone says, "Oh, we cannot find that and that," well, I'm going to try, to have it. Or I miss that. Well, I'm going to try to, respond to that. So listening to the people and putting your heart into what you write. That's my two biggest advice.
It's all communication. It's just so great, so refreshing to hear you say that. It's something that's just fundamental to literally why we do this show, is like figuring out ways to communicate with what we call unsung hospitality heroes and your audience, anybody who's a part of your community. I think it really, really matters. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. The storytelling is important because somebody else makes baguettes. There's a croissant somewhere else. They may not know that your croissant is better. They know that your story is compelling. And that I think is so important because, somebody can open a bakery that makes a croissant just as good as you next week, right down the street, yet they can't tell your story. It's not their story. So
I agree.
I think it's so, so important. So I really, really appreciate hearing that. Blandine, this was amazing. It was such a great conversation. I'm excited both to I need some baguette, I need some croissant, I need the rillette. I'm excited about this, and really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me.
All right. You have a great rest of your day. I'm going to check out one of these 6 a.m. Storytelling. I'm excited about that. Blandine, thank you so much for being on. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Blandine Mazeran, the chef owner of the French Kitchen Culinary Center. Sophie, get in here. So Sophie Breaker basically runs the show.
I do not run the show.
Definitely run the show. Yeah, I just do this. And Blandine and the kitchen right in your backyard, as we've developed this show, Best Served Bake, which is basically your channel. You were so excited about having this channel and continuing to tell stories. And God, bakery people are just the best.
They're so amazing.
They just bring pure joy. Dude. There's like so little bravado and ego as compared to us, hotline restaurant chefs. And it's just like bringing.
There's quite a bit of bravado and ego.
Yeah, I guess there is.
Chefs just outweigh the bakery bravado.
Yes, 100%. Have you had the butter left on your fingers from the croissant? Those little nuances that she was mentioning are so important. Like that. I always talk about having chapstick left on my lips when I have like a properly made croissant. So real quick, what are a couple of the things that you really enjoy from there, and why did you want to have her on the show?
Well, I was introduced to her way back in high school, and I went to her bouche class, bouche de Noël class, and
you make a holiday, big old.
Oh yeah, we made 2 of them. There
logs.
was a champagne one, there was a coffee one, and then I just made my way through all of her classes until I went to culinary school, and I worked for her for the first 2-3 months that they were open, and it was a lot of fun. And also I've never had so much croissant in my life, and it was just, we were doing so much food tasting that it was like you would come home from the day and be like, oh, I can't eat anything else because I've eaten so much today.
Oh, and you can never have a croissant anywhere else then once you've had.
No, honestly, yeah.
Like so, oh, I love hearing that. And I love that we got to have her on, who's basically been a part of your journey, like somebody who really sparked that journey. So very cool. I did not realize how deep that this episode was in the sense of the meaning to you. So I really, really appreciate that. All right, everybody. Best Served Podcast 190, a little piece of France and the personal history of Sophie Breaker's trajectory in food and beverage and hospitality that now has her running the Best Served Podcast. So really appreciate that. That is it for today. Thank you so much. Cheers.